Welcome, everyone. This is not just the story of a company. This is the story of a man who saw the future before anyone else did. A man who turned a small electronics shop into a global empire. A man who believed that technology could connect hearts, not just homes. This is the real story of Sony, the company that gave us the Walkman, the PlayStation, the first portable CD player, and changed how the world experiences entertainment. But it's not just about business. This is a story about vision, about how one person's dream in post-war Japan became a revolution that touched billions of lives. And you? Yes, you will not only feel inspired, you will learn powerful life lessons. You will learn how to think differently. And most importantly, you will improve your English in the most enjoyable way. So stay till the end of this journey, because this is not a boring business story. This is an adventure. And now, let's begin. Part 1. Ashes, Ambition, and an Impossible Dream. The birth of Sony. The year was 1946. Japan lay in ruins after World War II. Cities were destroyed. Families were broken. Hope seemed impossible. In this darkness, two men met in Tokyo. Masaru Ibuka, a brilliant engineer, and Akio Morita, a physics graduate from a wealthy family. They had lost almost everything in the war, but they had something powerful left. They had ideas. Ibuka had always been fascinated by electronics. As a young man, he would spend hours taking apart radios, studying every wire, every connection. He believed that Japan, despite losing the war, could win the world through innovation. During the war, he had worked on military equipment. Now, with no job and no future, he rented a small, damaged room in a bombed department store in Tokyo. The room had no proper walls, no heating, just broken windows and determination. He called his tiny workspace Tokyo Sushin Kogyo, which meant Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation. It sounds impressive, but it was just Ibuka, a few tools, and endless hope. He started repairing radios for American soldiers. But he dreamed of creating, not just fixing. That's when Akio Morita entered the picture. Morita came from a family that had made sake for 300 years. His father expected him to continue the family business. But Morita had different plans. He had studied physics. He understood business. And most importantly, he understood people. When he read about Ibuka's small company in a newspaper, he knew he had found his partner. Their first meeting was electric. Ibuka showed Morita his workshop. Morita saw beyond the broken walls. He saw potential. They shook hands and decided to build something together. Something that would make Japan proud again. Their first product was not glamorous. It was a rice cooker. And it was terrible. The rice either burned or stayed raw. They sold less than 100 units. Most people would have quit. But Ibuka and Morita learned an important lesson. Innovation means failing until you succeed. They kept experimenting. They built tape recorders when nobody in Japan knew what tape recording was. They created Japan's first magnetic tape. They made products nobody asked for because they believed people didn't know what they needed yet. But they faced a huge problem. Japanese products had a bad reputation. The world saw "made in Japan" as cheap, low quality, not trustworthy. Morita decided this had to change. He said, "We won't just make products. We will build a brand that commands respect." In 1958, they made a decision that changed everything. They renamed their company Sony. The name came from sonus, Latin for sound, and sunny, meaning little sun. It was easy to pronounce in any language. It sounded modern, international, confident. Some Japanese businessmen laughed. Why not use a traditional Japanese name? But Morita knew that to conquer the world, you need a name the world can speak. Part 2. The machine that made the world listen. The Walkman revolution. By the 1970s, Sony had grown from a small repair shop to a respected electronics company. They made televisions, tape recorders, radios. They had offices in America, Europe, Asia. But Morita was not satisfied. He kept asking what's next. What will change the world? The answer came from an unexpected place. Ibuka loved opera music, but he hated carrying heavy tape players when he traveled. One day, he asked Sony's engineers, "Can you make something small, just for listening, just for me?" The engineers were confused. A tape player with no speakers, no recording function. Who would want that? But Morita heard this request differently. He didn't hear about a smaller machine. He heard about a new way of living. He imagined people walking with their own personal soundtrack, music becoming as private as thoughts, entertainment becoming portable, personal, powerful. He gathered his team and said, "Build it." Many executives protested. Market research shows nobody wants this. It's too expensive. It's too strange. But Morita didn't believe in market research for breakthrough products. He believed that true innovation creates its own market. The engineers worked for months. They removed recording mechanisms, speakers, everything unnecessary. They focused on one thing: perfect sound in the smallest possible size. They added lightweight headphones. They made it run on simple batteries. They designed it to fit in a pocket. In July 1979, Sony launched the Walkman in Japan, priced 33,000 yen, about $150. The media mocked it. One headline read, "Sony's expensive toy for lonely people." Sales started slowly. Store owners didn't understand it. Customers walked past it. Morita refused to panic. He knew the problem. People couldn't imagine the experience without trying it. So he created a brilliant marketing strategy. He hired young people to wear Walkmans in public places. Parks, trains, streets, beaches. They danced, smiled, looked cool. They let curious people try the headphones. Just for a moment. Just enough to feel the magic. The effect was instant. People who tried it wanted it. They had never experienced music this way. So personal, so clear, so free. Within 2 months, Sony sold out their entire stock. Orders flooded in from around the world. Sony couldn't manufacture fast enough. The Walkman didn't just sell products. It changed culture. Before the Walkman, music was social, shared, public. After the Walkman, music became individual, private, personal. It created the concept of my playlist. Decades before digital music, it made headphones a fashion statement. It turned walking into an experience. By 1999, Sony had sold over 200 million Walkmans worldwide. But more importantly, they had proven something. They had shown that Sony didn't follow trends. Sony created them. Part 3: Betrayal, Revenge, and the Gaming Revolution. The PlayStation story. The 1990s brought new challenges. Nintendo dominated video games. Computers were becoming popular. Sony needed another breakthrough. They found it in the most unexpected way. Through betrayal. Ken Kutaragi was a relatively unknown engineer at Sony. He watched his daughter play Nintendo games and thought the graphics looked terrible. The sound is weak. I can make this better. He convinced Sony's leadership to partner with Nintendo on a new gaming system that would use CD-ROM technology. Sony spent millions developing the technology. They created prototypes. They prepared announcements. Everything was ready for the Consumer Electronics Show in 1991. Sony executives flew to Chicago, excited to announce their partnership with Nintendo. But Nintendo had other plans. Hours before Sony's presentation, Nintendo announced a partnership with Philips instead. They didn't warn Sony. They didn't apologize. They simply abandoned them in front of the entire industry. Sony's executives were humiliated. Some wanted to forget gaming entirely. But Kutaragi stood up and said no. Let's show them what Sony can do. Let's build our own gaming system. Let's make it so good that Nintendo will regret this day forever. The boardroom was silent. Building a gaming console from scratch was incredibly risky. Sony had no game developers, no gaming experience, no established market. But they had something else. They had anger transformed into ambition. Kutaragi got approval and went to work. He didn't want to build just another game console. He wanted to build a multimedia entertainment system, something that could play games, music CDs, and eventually movies. Something that looked sophisticated, not like a toy. The team worked relentlessly. They focused on 3D graphics when others used 2D. They added memory cards so players could save progress. They made controllers that felt perfect in adult hands. They created development tools that made it easier for game creators to build amazing experiences. On December 3, 1994, Sony launched the PlayStation in Japan. Within 9 months, they sold over 2 million units. When it launched in America and Europe in 1995, the response was even bigger. Lines formed outside stores. Units sold out immediately. Gaming magazines called it revolutionary. But hardware was only half the battle. Sony needed games. They partnered with developers worldwide. They funded creative projects others rejected. They brought Hollywood-style storytelling to games. Titles like Final Fantasy V, Metal Gear Solid, and Gran Turismo didn't just entertain. They created emotional experiences. By 2005, the original PlayStation had sold over 102 million units worldwide. Sony had not just entered the gaming industry. They had conquered it. The company that Nintendo betrayed had become their biggest competitor. Sometimes the best revenge is massive success. Part 4. Beyond Electronics. Sony's entertainment empire. Success in gaming taught Sony an important lesson. Content is king. You can make the best television, but if there's nothing good to watch, it's just an expensive box. You can create perfect speakers, but without great music, they're just silent decorations. Morita had always understood this. Even in the 1960s, he said Sony must be more than hardware. We must touch hearts, not just hands. This vision led to Sony's boldest moves yet. In 1988, Sony shocked the business world by purchasing CBS Records for $2 billion. Critics called it insane, a Japanese electronics company buying an American music label. It made no sense. But Sony saw the future. They saw a world where they could create the music and the devices to play it. The critics were wrong. Under Sony's ownership, the music division flourished. They signed Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, Mariah Carey, and countless others. They didn't just distribute music. They helped create cultural moments. But Sony wasn't done. In 1989, they made an even bigger purchase, Columbia Pictures for $3.4 billion. Now they owned one of Hollywood's major studios. Again, critics laughed. Japanese executives running Hollywood. It will never work. The early years were difficult. Cultural differences created conflicts. Some movies failed. Money was lost. But Sony learned, adapted, evolved. They gave creative freedom to filmmakers. They respected artistic vision while demanding commercial viability. The results spoke for themselves. Men in Black, Spider-Man, The Da Vinci Code, James Bond films, Ghostbusters, Jumanji. Sony Pictures didn't just make movies. They created franchises, universes, experiences that lasted generations. By 2000, Sony had achieved something remarkable. A person could wake up, watch a Sony Pictures movie on their Sony TV, listen to Sony music artists on their Sony Walkman, and play Sony games on their PlayStation. Sony had created an ecosystem of entertainment. But they never forgot Morita's philosophy. Technology should disappear. Only the experience should remain. Whether it was the tears during a movie, the joy of a perfect song, or the excitement of beating a game, Sony understood that emotions, not electronics, create loyalty. Part 5. The Digital Revolution and Sony's Resilience. The 2000s brought new challenges. Apple launched the iPod, making the Walkman obsolete. Smartphones began replacing cameras. Netflix started streaming movies. The digital revolution threatened everything Sony had built. Many predicted Sony's decline. They're too big, too slow, too traditional. They can't compete with Silicon Valley. They're finished. But these critics forgot Sony's history. This was a company born from war's ashes. A company that turned betrayal into billions. A company that had reinvented itself before. Sony's response was strategic, not panic. They couldn't win every battle, so they chose their wars carefully. They doubled down on gaming, making PlayStation more powerful, more connected, more essential. They transformed their movie studio, creating content for streaming while maintaining theatrical releases. They evolved their music business, adapting to digital while preserving artist relationships. Most importantly, they focused on what others couldn't replicate. Image sensors that powered the world's best cameras, including iPhones. Professional equipment that filmed Hollywood blockbusters. Technologies that others needed but couldn't create. The transformation worked. By 2020, Sony was stronger than ever. PlayStation 5 launched to record demand. Sony Pictures produced its hits for theaters and streaming. Sony Music dominated global charts. The company that critics called obsolete had revenues exceeding $80 billion. But success hadn't changed Sony's core values. In 2019, they launched the Sony Global Relief Fund for COVID-19. Contributing $100 million, they supported artists who couldn't tour. They helped theaters that couldn't open. They remembered that technology serves humanity, not the other way around. Today, Sony stands at another crossroads. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, the metaverse, new challenges and opportunities emerge daily. But if history teaches us anything, it's that Sony doesn't fear the future. They create it. From two men in a bombed-out building to a global empire worth over $100 billion. From rice cookers that failed to PlayStations that defined generations. From made in Japan, meaning cheap, to Sony meaning excellence. This isn't just a business story. It's proof that vision, persistence, and respect for human creativity can overcome any obstacle. The boy who took apart radios became an engineer who rebuilt Japan's reputation. The sake brewer's son who disappointed his father became a global business icon. The company that everyone rejected became the brand everyone respects. Sony's greatest product was never a device. It was belief. Belief that technology should inspire. Belief that entertainment should unite. Belief that a small company from a defeated nation could change the world. And they did? If Sony's story teaches us anything, it's this. Your circumstances don't define your destiny. Your response to failure determines your future. Your willingness to dream bigger than your reality creates your legacy. Whether you're in a destroyed city or a difficult situation, whether you've been betrayed or belittled, whether you're starting from nothing or starting over, remember Sony's example. They didn't have advantages. They had ambition. They didn't have luck. They had persistence. They didn't have guarantees. They had belief. And with those simple tools, they built an empire that touches billions of lives every single day. So what's your Sony story going to be? What impossible dream will you pursue? What betrayal will you turn into breakthrough? What failure will become your foundation for success? The world is waiting for your answer. And just like Sony proved, sometimes the best stories begin in the most unlikely places. If this story inspired you, if it improved your English, if it gave you hope for your own journey, then please subscribe to English Unleashed. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in their dreams again. Comment below what lesson from Sony's story resonated most with you. And remember, every empire starts with someone brave enough to begin. Your story is waiting to be written. Start today.